I had taken late trains through Bangkok before, but this time the schedule forced me into an unfamiliar hotel near Sukhumvit. It was a tall, glass tower, the kind of business hotel that promised efficiency rather than charm. The lobby was quiet when I arrived just after 11 at night. A single staff member bowed slightly behind the desk, her eyes heavy with exhaustion. I handed over my ID, and she tapped quickly on her keyboard. She smiled politely but avoided my eyes when she slid the keycard across. "You are on the 8th floor. Please enjoy your stay." The air smelled faintly of lemon polish, though the carpets had the tired look of decades of footsteps. A bellboy dozed in the corner chair, pretending to check his phone. The lobby music was too soft, more like a broken speaker humming than a real melody. As I walked toward the elevators, I noticed something odd. The panel beside the call button listed floors 1 through 3, then skipped directly to 5. 8 was the top. I frowned, assuming it was a printing error, but something about the gap unsettled me. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside and pressed 8. The ride was smooth, almost silent. The mirrored walls made me feel trapped in an endless box. I watched my own reflection stand stiffly, holding a tired face while the numbers blinked. 3, then suddenly 5. The jump over 4 happened too quickly. The doors opened on 8, and I stepped into a wide hallway lit with soft golden lamps. The carpet was thick and muffled my steps. My room was at the end, simple but clean. I dropped my bag, showered quickly, and tried to sleep. But before drifting off, I thought about the missing floor. Why build a tall hotel and erase a number? In Thailand, I knew the number 4 sounded like the word for death. Perhaps that was the reason. I closed my eyes, telling myself it was nothing more than superstition. The next day passed in meetings. By the time I returned, the city's night lights glowed through the glass windows. I ate quickly at a street stall and returned to the hotel. The lobby was empty. When I pressed the elevator button, the doors opened immediately, as though waiting for me. I stepped inside, and the mirrored walls closed around me again. The floor indicator glowed. 1. I pressed 8 and leaned back. The elevator hummed upward. 2, 3. Then it slowed. My heart stuttered. The panel showed 4. The doors slid open smoothly, though there was no button for that number. A corridor stretched ahead, dim and colorless, lit by a single flickering bulb. The carpet was thinner, patterned differently, almost industrial. I could smell dampness, as if water had seeped through the walls long ago. I froze. This floor was not supposed to exist. For a moment, I considered staying inside, pressing the button again. But curiosity pushed me forward. I stepped out, and the doors closed behind me with a heavy thud. The sound echoed too loudly for such a small space. The corridor seemed longer than it should have been. My footsteps sounded uneven, as though someone else walked slightly behind. I turned once but saw only the empty hall. The air was heavier here and colder. I told myself it was just a maintenance level, perhaps closed off. Yet the carpet had numbers printed on the doors. 401, 402, 403. Each door had a tarnished handle, as if touched many times. I felt the urge to try one, but the hallway was too still. Instead, I turned back toward the elevator. The corridor stretched longer than before. My stomach clenched with unease. The bulb overhead buzzed weakly, then steadied. I stood in the middle of the hallway, realizing it had grown narrower. The walls pressed closer, peeling wallpaper exposing dark plaster beneath. I whispered to myself, "This is not real." My voice sounded muffled, swallowed instantly by the air. I began to walk back, counting the numbers on the doors. 401, 402, 403, 404. The last made me stop. 4 again. The number scratched roughly on the plaque as if carved rather than printed. My chest tightened. I reached out a trembling hand. The doorknob was cold. For a moment, I thought I felt a pulse beneath the metal. I jerked back. Further down, I heard something soft. A shuffle, like bare feet dragging across carpet. My breath caught. I strained to listen. The sound faded, then returned, closer this time. I turned and walked quickly, not daring to run. My shoes pressed into the thin carpet, the smell of mildew growing stronger. At the end of the corridor, the elevator doors finally appeared, gleaming faintly. Relief surged through me. I pressed the button again and again until the doors opened. Inside, the panel glowed with 4. My reflection stared back, pale and frightened. I pressed 8, and the elevator rose smoothly. The doors opened to the familiar golden-lit corridor of my floor. Everything was normal again. My legs shook as I returned to my room. I locked the door, sat on the bed, and listened to the silence. Sleep came in fits, restless and broken. I dreamed of corridors folding into each other, doors repeating endlessly, numbers blurring. In the morning, I convinced myself it had been stress, an exhausted imagination. I forced myself through another day of meetings. By night, I returned once more, uneasy but unwilling to show fear. Again, the elevator doors opened immediately. Inside, the mirrored walls waited. I pressed 8. The numbers blinked upward. 3, 5, then, impossibly, 4 again. The doors opened and the same corridor stretched ahead. My heart sank. This time, I counted carefully. 401, 402, 403. Then again 401, 402, 403. The numbers repeated, the hallway circling without end. I felt sweat bead on my forehead, though the air was cold. I whispered prayers under my breath, trying to stay calm. At one door, the handle twitched slightly, as though someone inside tested it. I backed away. The corridor tilted slightly, as if the floor slanted downward. My legs felt heavy, dragging me deeper. I forced myself to turn and retrace my steps. The elevator was gone. Only doors stretched behind me, repeating forever. My chest hammered. I pressed my palm against the wall. The wallpaper felt damp, spongy. When I pulled my hand away, it left a dark print, as though the wall had absorbed me slightly. I kept walking, though the hallway repeated endlessly. Every few steps I checked the numbers. 401, 402, 403. Again and again. The sameness was worse than chaos. Then I heard it. A whisper, low and broken, like voices speaking beneath water. It came from behind one of the doors. I leaned close. The sound grew clearer. 2 voices, arguing, though I could not understand the words. I jerked back as something thudded against the door from the other side. The wood rattled. My stomach lurched. I staggered backward and tripped, crashing against the opposite wall. Silence returned instantly. The door stood still, its plaque reading 404. I scrambled to my feet and began to run. The corridor bent and twisted but never ended. The air grew colder, each breath forming faint mist. My legs ached. The whispers returned, now from multiple doors, overlapping and pulling at me. I pressed my hands over my ears, but the sound seeped through. The hallway circled. I realized with horror that I had returned to the same spot where I began. The flickering bulb buzzed above me. The doors repeated again. I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat. It echoed strangely, delayed by half a second, as if someone else screamed with me a moment later. I pounded on one door desperately. No answer. Only silence, pressing closer. Then the lights flickered and I saw something at the far end, a small figure, still and watching. I froze. My pulse thundered. The figure moved slowly forward. A child, Thai, no more than 7 or 8, wearing an old hospital gown that brushed the floor. She carried a small toy in her hand, a wooden horse. Her face was pale, eyes wide and dark. She walked barefoot, each step silent. I wanted to speak, but no sound came out. My throat had closed. She stopped a few meters away, lifted the toy, and tilted her head. Her lips moved, but no sound emerged. Then the toy slipped from her hand and clattered softly to the floor. The echo stretched far longer than it should have. I blinked and she was gone. Only the toy remained, resting on the carpet. I crouched slowly and reached for it. My fingers brushed the wood. It was wet, as though soaked in water. I recoiled, heart pounding. The corridor shook faintly, the walls trembling. The doors began to rattle all at once. Whispers rose into screams. I covered my ears and ran blindly. At last, through the blur of doors and numbers, I saw the elevator. Its doors gaped open like a mouth. I sprinted and hurled myself inside. I slammed the button for 8. The doors closed. The panel blinked. 4. The elevator shook, then rose. 5, 6, 7, 8. The doors opened to the golden-lit corridor I knew. I stumbled out, gasping, trembling, nearly in tears. When I reached my room, I locked the door and collapsed onto the bed. I did not sleep. At dawn, I checked out. The receptionist smiled politely, asking if everything had been comfortable. I wanted to tell her, to demand an explanation, but her expression was too calm, too practiced. I signed the form and left. As I wheeled my bag through the lobby, I glanced once more at the elevator panel. The numbers gleamed normally, 1 through 3, 5 through 8. But when the door slid open for another guest, I saw it. Just for a moment, the button for 4 scratched faintly into the panel, glowing dimly as if it had always been there.